So this NFL season has been completely unpredictable, and Week 13 was no different. Multiple contenders lost to teams they probably should have beat. Two Super Bowl favorites from the offseason aren't even in the playoff picture right now, and we have a new MVP favorite who's only 23 years old. Add in some insane one-handed catches, a few key injuries, lots of unexpected teams still fighting for their playoff hopes, and you've got yourself a very entertaining week, much to the delight of the league who thrives on chaos. So let's talk about it all right after. All right, first up, the Cleveland Browns got humbled by the 49ers in Shedeur Sanders' second NFL start. Not all of it was on him. They lost two fumbles, including a muffed punt, and both of them gave San Francisco short fields to work with. The Niners made him pay for it too, scoring touchdowns off both turnovers, and that was really the tail of the tape. CMC came into this week leading the league in scrimmage yards, but he was bottled up for just 74 total, his second lowest mark of the season. Shedeur had just 149 passing yards, but he did throw a touchdown and avoided any turnovers. Myles Garrett notched himself another sack. He's now at 19 on the year and has 5 games left to get 4 more and break the all-time single-season sack record. Speaking of Myles, he and Shelby Harris were not happy with wide receiver Juwan Jennings after the game. Apparently, Jennings was talking all kinds of trash to some Browns players, and Myles basically said he crossed a line by demeaning and disparaging some of their players. Shelby Harris said he can see why Jennings got punched in the family jewels last week, and he's surprised nobody has punched him in the jaw yet. Well, I don't know what was said, but obviously he made them pretty upset by whatever it was. Either way, Jennings seems to have had the last laugh as the Niners came away with a convincing win 26-8. That propelled Brock Purdy and company to 9-4 on the year, and things got interesting in the NFC West this week because the Rams got handed the most surprising loss of the weekend thanks to the Carolina Panthers. Stafford's first touchdown broke the NFL record for most passing touchdowns without an interception. He had 28 straight, which is pretty crazy, but once he got that record out of the way, he figured he could throw a couple picks, so he did. One of them was a pick six, plus he was strip-sacked on their final drive, and the Panthers picked up a first down to put the game on ice. Bryce Young was excellent, just 5 incompletions and 3 touchdowns, and get this, Bryce became the youngest player in league history to have 11 game-winning drives in the fourth quarter or overtime, passing Josh Allen. The win moved them to 7-6 and has them just a half game behind Tampa in the NFC South. For the Rams, they're still on top of the NFC West, but all that's separating them from Seattle is a head-to-head tiebreaker. Those teams play each other in Week 16, which should be pure cinema and probably a lot more entertaining than the Seahawks win over the Vikings this week. Seattle shut them out 26-0 with J.J. McCarthy out due to a concussion and the rookie UDFA Max Brosmer getting his first NFL start. And it might be his last because his 4-interception NFL debut notched him the 3rd worst EPA per dropback by a starting quarterback this season, and Brosmer became the first quarterback since Nathan Peterman in 2017 to throw 4 picks in their NFL debut. One of those picks, by the way, was a Will Levis-inspired 86-yard house call, with Ernest Jones taking that one all the way and snagging another one in this game as well. Then Seattle's defense held Justin Jefferson to a career-low 4 yards. This man has to be about done with this team. I do feel bad for him. It's just one of those situations where you kind of risked a lot on J.J. McCarthy. He's underperformed, has dealt with some injury this year, and then Carson Wentz is on IR, but even when he was playing, he wasn't doing great, and Brosmer is worse than both of them combined, so not really sure what you're going to do right now if you're the Vikings. The silver lining in this game, though, I guess would be Sam Darnold didn't light Minnesota up, but Seattle's defense was all over the place and held the Vikings to 0 points. That's the first time the Vikings have been shut out since 2007. It's a lost season for the Vikings. They even waived Adam Thielen on Monday, who requested his release after not being involved in the offense at all this year. He wants to actually play and go compete for a championship, and obviously that's not going to happen with the Vikings. We'll see if he catches on somewhere, but I do wish Thielen the best. Minnesota is certainly free-falling. They're 4-8 and are cooked this season. They basically traded places with the Chicago Bears in the division, who are somehow the 1 seed in the entire NFC right now. They've had a handful of wins over losing teams, but they got their signature win of the season this week after beating Philly 24-15 on Black Friday. Their mission was to run the ball and then run it some more. Well, they succeeded because as a team, they had 47 carries for 281 yards and 2 scores. Both Swift and Monangai topped 100 yards, the first time 2 Bears players did that in the same game since 1985. Saquon was bottled up for just 56 yards, and even though A.J. Brown had his best game of the season, it wasn't nearly enough as Eagles fans continue to call for the firing of their offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo. This is their second loss in a row as they're now 8-4 and have fallen to the 3rd seed in the NFC. It's not impossible for Dallas to catch them in the division either. They're 6-5-1 with 3 straight wins after beating the Chiefs on Thanksgiving. It was a frustrating loss for KC, who couldn't capitalize on a 4-touchdown game by Patrick Mahomes. Heading into this game, the Chiefs were actually 12-0 in the Mahomes era when he threw 4 touchdowns and no picks, and that included even playoff games, but they moved to 12-1 after this one as they couldn't overcome the Cowboys in Dallas. That offense was firing on all cylinders, and they ended up losing 28-31. Outside of a pick on the opening drive, Dak picked apart KC's defense, and CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens caught a combined 13 passes for 200 yards and a touchdown. The defense for Dallas is definitely looking better as well since trading for Quinnen Williams, and who knows what can happen with the Cowboys down the road if they stay hot. For the Chiefs, they've lost 3 of their last 4, are currently 3rd in the West, and the 10th seed in the AFC. Basically, if they don't beat the Texans on Sunday Night Football this week, it's probably a wrap for them in 2025. Houston has been on a tear recently, winning 4 straight and improving to 7-5 after starting the year 0-3. Well, they notched another impressive win in Week 13, holding the high-powered Colts offense to just 16 points, their lowest total of the season. C.J. Stroud was back after missing the last 3 games with a concussion, just in time to get his 3rd win in Indy and stay undefeated there. He looked a little rusty at times and did throw a pick, which led to a Colts touchdown. But all in all, I thought he kept the chains moving and did a pretty good job. They had 7 more first downs than the Colts and ran 20 more plays on offense. Daniel Jones threw a couple tutties, but was held to just barely over a 50% completion rate against that elite secondary. It's worth noting that Daniel Jones is playing through some sort of a fracture in his fibula, which has to be affecting him somewhat. And now they've got another player to monitor because Sauce Gardner suffered a calf strain on Sunday. It looked pretty bad at first. He couldn't get off on his own power, and he's considered week to week. He avoided a serious injury. I don't even think he's going to be on IR because he's expected to be back before the playoffs. However, Indy needs to be careful because this loss actually puts them behind Jacksonville in the AFC South. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games and have the toughest remaining schedule in the entire league, according to Tankathon. That includes 2 games against the Jags, and those will be massive for both teams. Jacksonville made light work out of the Titans on Sunday, which is not surprising. The Jags' run game was stifled, just 2.6 yards per carry as a whole, but Trevor Lawrence tossed a couple touchdowns and the defense kept Tennessee out of the end zone all afternoon as they came out on top 25-3. And even with Brian Thomas Jr. back from his ankle injury, Jacoby Myers led the team in targets, catches, and yards while hauling in a touchdown for the 2nd week in a row. The 2 games against Indy will be a tough test for Jacksonville. Then they have the Broncos left on their schedule as well, so it should be interesting to see how things shake out in the AFC South with the Colts, Jags, and even the Texans making a late push. The Titans are in full-on rebuild mode though, and they currently have the best odds of landing the number 1 pick, and I'll be very curious to see what they do with that. QB again? Probably not. Trade down? Who really knows? What I do know is the Pittsburgh Steelers are in some serious trouble. After starting the year 4-1, they've fallen to 6-6 after going 2-5 in their last 7 games. Aaron Rodgers returned after missing a week with his left wrist fracture, and he couldn't get anything going against Buffalo's defense. 10 of 21 for just 117 yards, albeit playing with multiple fractures in his non-throwing hand, but still, even the Bills' run D was stout, giving up just 58 total yards on the ground after coming in as a bottom 3 rush defense. On the flip side, the Bills were very committed to the run, which was evidenced by James Cook getting 32 carries. The team as a whole had 51 rushes for 249 yards and a touchdown from Josh Allen. They won 26-7 in dominant fashion, and it was a good bounce back for them after their loss to Houston last week. For Pittsburgh, it's gotten so bad that Rodgers even threw Jonnu Smith and his receivers under the bus for messing up routes, similar to how he did last year with Mike Williams on the Jets. It's not going to get any easier because they've got the Ravens up next, who are 4-1 since Lamar returned from injury. He hasn't looked quite himself, but their one loss came from Thanksgiving at the hands of Joe Burrow, who himself returned from injury. It was his first game back since the toe surgery that he had. He's been out since week 2, and honestly, Burrow looked pretty solid all things considered. He was without T. Higgins, but he managed to throw for over 260 yards and 2 touchdowns with no turnovers, and he only took 1 sack, which is key. He did look rusty, but he'll sharpen up as the games go on here. Jamar Chase was back after serving his 1-game suspension, and he topped 100 yards for the 5th time this season. The Ravens were quite the mess. They lost 3 fumbles in the first half and had 5 turnovers in total, all of which came on passing plays. 2 fumbles and a pick for Lamar, then fumbles by Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely. That was a near would-be touchdown turned touchback. One of the most detrimental plays you can possibly have. They only finished with 14 points on the night, which is the least amount of points the Bengals have held an opponent to this year, and that's probably my biggest concerns in this one for the Ravens. Only 14 points put up against one of the worst defenses in all of football. Maybe it's just a fluke game. 5 turnovers doesn't happen often, but something to keep an eye on since he put an end to their 4-game losing streak with Burrow back in the fold. But at 4-8, there's still a long shot for making it to the postseason. Even if they win out, there's no guarantee they make it. Plus, winning out would require them to beat the Bills in Week 14, and the Ravens again the following week. Not going to be easy. What was easy, though, was the Chargers beat down over the Raiders. Kamani Vidal had 126 yards on the ground, and on the other end, Ashton Jeanty was completely shut down behind that pretty bad O-line. Geno threw his 14th pick of the year, most in the league, and even though Brock Bowers caught 2 touchdowns, including this nasty one-handed grab, they couldn't keep pace with LA, who cruised by them 31-14. Max Crosby is sick of being a part of the AFC West's welcome mat, though, and he took out his anger by pushing Justin Herbert to the ground late in this game. He quickly tried to dab him up after, I think, but Herbert wasn't really having it, and worth mentioning about Herbert is he actually fractured his left hand earlier on in the game. He did finish it out, but he underwent some surgical procedure on Monday, and his status for next week is unknown at this time. He wants to play, but we'll see how things look later on this week. So definitely keep your eyes out for that, because the Chargers have an absolutely brutal schedule coming up with games against the Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Texans, and Broncos. To say they need a healthy Herbert would be an understatement, and that's not to mention that they need to do their best to try to keep him upright as they are down their top 2 tackles. Another team in the AFC West keeps stacking up 1-score wins, but W's are W's at the end of the day, and Denver kept things going and interesting on Sunday night against the Commanders. The game went to overtime, and after the Broncos scored a touchdown on the opening possession, the Commanders responded with a touchdown of their own, but opted to go for 2, trying to win it rather than tie it. Then I think the Broncos had enough time to maybe get a Will Lutz field goal in potentially, so I did respect it. Well, Nick Bonito came screaming off the edge and batted down Mariota's pass, and that was all she wrote. Broncos win it 27-26, a tough finish for Washington, who have lost consecutive games in overtime and have now lost 7 straight, dropping to 3-9. Treylon Burks, of all people, though, did have one of the best catches I've ever seen. It was a pretty filthy one-handed snag over a defender in the end zone, but sadly they couldn't get the win. Bo Nix connected with 11 different receivers as he finished with his 2nd most amount of passing yards in a game this year. He had 1 pretty bad pick, but a pretty solid touchdown pass, and did enough to help his team move on to 10-2. Denver has a cupcake game against the Raiders next, but then life gets a little more challenging. They have the Packers, Jags, Chiefs, and Chargers left on their schedule, although I do think at the end of the day, they're still probably going to win the West. Next up, I want to circle back to the Thanksgiving games because I haven't mentioned yet that the Packers pulled off a very nice win over the Lions. Jordan Love missed on a few throws, but was excellent overall, finishing with 4 touchdowns while avoiding any sacks or turnovers. Dontavian Wicks caught a pair of touchdowns, and in the end, the Packers won 31-24 to sweep the season series against the Lions. That's a big deal down the stretch here, and Detroit is now 7-5 and outside of the playoffs as of right now. Kind of crazy, I believe the Chiefs and the Lions were up there amongst Super Bowl favorites before the season started, and they are both not even in the playoffs if the season ended today. There's still 5 games to go, so anything can happen, but Detroit needs to beat Dallas this Thursday if they want to stay alive. Then in Week 14, they've got to play Stafford and the Rams, so good luck with all that. It looked like they were going to get some help along the O-line when it was announced last week that center Frank Ragnow would be coming out of retirement. Well, it didn't last long because unfortunately Frank failed his physical and will not be rejoining the Lions after all. It was reported he had a grade 3 hamstring strain, which is really bad, so I don't know if that happened during him working out for his physical or if he came in there with that already, But that was pretty bad, and if it wasn't enough of a gut punch for Lions fans, cornerback Terrion Arnold was placed on season-ending IR on Monday with a shoulder injury that requires surgery. Some tough news for the Lions for sure, but they've got a chance to bounce back this Thursday against the Cowboys. For Green Bay, they've got a real shot to take the NFC North and even the 1 seed. They still have both games against the Bears left, and they'd be almost a lock for the division title if they can manage to win both of them. But let's keep it moving because the Bucs got a narrow win over the Cardinals on Sunday. Arizona actually had a chance to tie or take the lead at the end, but credit Tampa's defense for forcing the turnover on downs, which ended it. Bucs got the W 20-17. Arizona has lost 4 straight, but Jacoby Brissett has thrown for over 250 yards in all 7 of the games he started for them this season, including another 300-yard game against the Bucs. But sadly, an interception and a fumble by Bam Knight cost them, and despite outgaining Tampa by over 100 yards, they still fell short in the end. Bucky Irving was back after missing 7 games, though, for Tampa, which was great, and he found the end zone for the first time since week 4. The Bucs needed that win very badly after dropping 3 straight and are now holding on to a narrow lead over Carolina and the NFC South. However, those teams have both their matchups left on the schedule, which should be fascinating to watch. The other 2 teams in that division are the opposite of fascinating to watch right now, and that's going to be the Falcons and Saints. They got beaten by teams with a losing record on Sunday. Kirk Cousins and the Falcons lost to the Jets on a game-winning field goal as they wasted a 190-yard game from Bijan Robinson. Good on New York, though, and A.D. Mitchell had himself a nice 100-yard game that included a 52-yarder for Taylor's lone touchdown pass. Then the Saints almost pulled off the comeback win over Miami after recovering an onside kick, but they turned it over on downs as the Dolphins escaped with the win 21-17. Don't look now, but Miami has won 3 in a row and are 5-7 with a puncher's chance at making the postseason, though they would have to win out. Probably not happening, but they just need to keep feeding Devon Achane, who has rushed for over 120 yards in 3 straight games. That's the first time a Dolphins running back has done that since Ricky Williams in 2002. And then the Patriots continued their dominant run last night by beating the brakes off the New York Giants on Monday Night Football. They went up 17-0 in a hurry, then after taking a 30-7 lead into halftime, they basically were on cruise control the rest of the night and won it 33-15. Drake May was on point yet again, completing multiple passes for 30 or more yards and went 24 of 31 for 282 yards and 2 touchdowns. And with that, he became the second quarterback in NFL history to have 10 straight games with an 80-plus passer rating in a season before the age of 24. The only other was Dan Marino. So some pretty good company to be in for Drake. New England has now rattled off 10 straight wins as well, their longest winning streak since 2015. Then, if that wasn't enough, Mike Vrabel became just the 3rd coach since 1970 to have a win streak of 10 or more games in their first season with the team. And in these 10 straight games, by the way, the Patriots became the first team that have scored 23 points or more while holding their opponents to under 23 points. They have the best record in football at 11-2 and a 2.5 game lead over the Bills in the AFC East, though they do play each other again in Week 15. But by all accounts, the Patriots could very well lock up the 1 seed in the AFC. It's going to be a battle right now between them and the Broncos, and you got to give a ton of credit to Vrabel for transforming the team after they went 4-13 last year. And yeah, people are going to knock the Pats for their 4th place schedule after finishing with that record in 2024, but they can't really help that, and they are making the most of their opportunities, that's for sure. On top of that, Drake May is the current betting favorite for MVP. Matt Stafford is right behind. He had a pretty bad game over the weekend, as we just discussed earlier in this video, right? But Drake May, if he stays consistent, has a real shot at winning MVP. If I had to put money on it, I don't know, still probably Stafford, but you never really know what could happen, and he's making a great case talking about Drake through 13 weeks this season. The stability Vrabel has brought to this team has massively helped as well, and the year 2 leap from Drake should have Patriots fans feeling pretty great about their next franchise quarterback for the next 10-15 years after only not having Tom Brady for 5 years, you poor souls. The Giants on the other end of the spectrum, though, from New England. They've lost 7 straight and are now 2-11 on the year. Jackson Dart has a ton of promise, but he needs to protect himself because he took a shot on the sideline during this game. It looked questionable in the moment, but it was a clean hit, as Jackson was really just trying to get more yards up the sideline, and it fired up some of Dart's teammates for sure. Bit of a scuffle broke out after that. Thankfully, Dart was all good, but with him already having 1 confirmed concussion on the year, literally just coming back from the protocol, you don't want to see him continuing to take hits like that. You also don't want to see your kicker completely whiff on the ball for a field goal attempt, which is what Younghoe Koo did last night. I've never seen anything like it, but Koo hit the ground like a foot in front of the ball, not even close. Honestly, the Giants special teams unit was very bad in this game. Okay, that's putting it nicely, but they gave up a 94-yard punt return for a touchdown. They then fumbled on a kickoff. It was a brutal hit. Hope their returner is okay. And then New England recovered that and turned it into a field goal. So that combined with Koo's missed kick is absolute disastrous stuff from their special teams unit. So yeah, not good at all. And neither was Abdul Carter, sitting out the first few possessions due to disciplinary reasons. Mike Kafka, interim head coach of the Giants, wouldn't reveal exactly why or what happened. He just said it was his decision to hold him out the first few series. Well, by the time Carter got in the game, they were down 17-0, and it was already pretty much a wrap. What's concerning about this is it's the second time this season now Abdul Carter has faced discipline from the team. That's not an ideal look for your third overall pick, but he's still 22 at the end of the day, and you just hope he learns from his mistakes or whatever the heck is going on there. Either way, the pieces are there for the G-men for the future. You can get a solid head coach next year if you can, building around Dart, Malik Neighbors, Cam Scattaboo, and that electric D-line should help propel them forward in 2026, or at least that's the hope. But hey, let me know what your biggest takeaways were from Week 13, along with your biggest surprises and concerns. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.